Hey, Michael here, Acquisitions Anonymous, Internet's #1 podcast about business investing, buying and selling, and talking poop about them. Today, we actually had a pretty fun deal. It was through our friends over at acquire.com, Andrew and his team, and it is a digital agency that is highly profitable and very reasonably priced up in Canada. So Bill, Mills, and myself, Michael, talked through this deal, and where it went was a lot of fun. So stick to it and see if you like it as much as we did. Thanks. Hey, Michael here. Want to talk to you about today's sponsor for the episode, which is cloudbookkeeping.com. So Cloud Bookkeeping is actually run by my neighbor, Charlie. So I've met him in person and can attest that he's a real human being and a good person. And what Cloud Bookkeeping does is offer a full suite of bookkeeping services, all in the cloud, for you around QuickBooks and other technologies that you're using as a small business owner. So if you're interested in getting the bookkeeping part of running a business off of your plate and focusing on running your business, Charlie and his team are one to call. They can put together a bunch of other stuff in terms of helping you manage and grow your business besides just bookkeeping, sophisticated reporting, definitely helping you get your QuickBooks online set up in the right way, and a number of things around payroll as well. So definitely know them and recommend them. If you want to find out more about Cloud Bookkeeping, you can go to their website at cloudbookkeeping.com. Reach out to Charlie. I know many of you have, and see if he can help you make your running your business easier and more fun by letting them help with a lot of the bookkeeping solutions. So, and when you call, mention this podcast. It would help us and help Charlie know that we're supporting him as well. So thanks a bunch, and cloudbookkeeping.com as the sponsor for today's episode. Oh, Mills, before you start cursing, you need to know we've already clicked record.
I just saw the red dot staring me in the face, so I'm really glad. I'm glad you told me.
Mills, you made it. You made it on 3 of the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 countdown. You joined on 3.
Good.
We are glad you're here.
I'm glad you're here, Bill. And Michael, I knew you were going to be here, but Bill, I thought for sure you were going to be a dad of 3 this morning.
Me too. The due date is actually not until tomorrow, so I'm on borrowed time. So this is probably my last Acquisitions Anonymous for a couple weeks, but I will be back.
You shall be missed. All right, I brought a deal today. It's from our friends at acquire.com, and it has some stuff going on for it. It's in Canada. It's an agency, and according to acquire.com, things are getting serious. What's the thing where people change their Facebook status from in a relationship to it's complicated? And it looks like this is one where it's complicated. I don't know. You guys dated recently. So, how does that work?
I've been married 14 years.
I've been married for like 5, 6 years. So no, we've dated for a while before
I've not dated recently.
But so this is interesting and an incredible piece of marketing from acquire.com. So Michael, you are logged in here. I'm logged out, so I can't see this little block. But for logged in platinum acquire.com buyers, you can actually see how many buyers are PMing the seller. That's what this is that you got on the screen, right?
Yeah. First it was Tinder, then it's Bumble, and now it's acquire.com with beer stuff. By the way, there's one of my acquaintances on Twitter, I guess, is in the dating market, and he was posting screenshots of like what it's like to text with somebody before you even meet with them now on dating apps, and it is insane. Like people are so aggressively mean to each other. Are you sure you guys just don't want to meet at a bar or something? It's so crazy.
And maybe it's all going to come full circle and everybody deletes the apps and you start meeting people at bars.
I don't know. It's, I read this book called Generations because you guys, I'm sure you're familiar with it. I'm kind of a nerd about generational differences in studies. And one of the things that is a problem with like Gen Z and folks like that trying to meet mates is just walking up and starting to talk to somebody and starting a conversation. Like, because that's a creepy thing to happen on the internet and people's like defenses are up, doing that in real world makes you seem like a creeper. So like the idea of like meeting somebody in the elevator in an office building where you both work and then you go for coffee and then you date, like that is just like like super weird to Gen Z. Like they don't want to do that. Like that just seems like you're a total creeper if you do that.
You just have to be real shadowy and like their Instagram posts for a little while, and then they're like, oh, what is this?
Birth rate for Gen Z not looking good. Not looking good.
It's already a tiny generation. And the other thing that it talks about, this book talks about, it's called Generations. It was written by this PhD lady. And just like most other things, she is incredibly good about writing about her generation. She's a Gen X like I am, and she sucks about writing about the rest of the generations. I read the whole book. I was like, only the Gen X chapter here was any good. But one of the things that she talks about is because of technology and the urbanization of stuff, so many of these Gen Zs are just delaying adulthood, and we're seeing that over and over again. Whereas like Gen X, like we're kind of flummoxed that our kids are not actually out doing bad things like premarital sex, drinking, drugs, all that kind of stuff. And instead, Gen Zs are just like, no, I don't need a driver's license. That's cool. I'll just stay at home. Like, what is wrong with you? Like, go have some fun.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, this is a whole podcast. Michael's favorite topic, differences between generations. Always.
oh yeah, I'll talk about it.
It's interesting, Michael, because you tweet about this, and I thought it was just like pop psychology, of like Gen X, Gen Z, baby boomer dynamics, in the kind of broader business. I just thought you were like making this stuff up.
You thought it was just some crap I just made up?
Yeah, I thought you were making this stuff up as you went. I didn't realize you actually like researched it.
Michael, I didn't know you could read.
All right, so let's talk about this deal before you guys call me stupid anymore. All right, so here's the deal. It's from our friends at acquire.com. Andrew, 53 buyers are in active conversations, pre-approved for financing, and they also are guided by experts. And one of the things, like unlike other platforms where you can find a deal, I like that they have like this captive brokerage arm. So like pretty cool stuff, especially if you're going to do something bigger. So this is an agency startup, and it's an innovative agency transforming businesses through tailored web, mobile, and infrastructure solutions located in Canada. They're asking $3.9 million for it, which is 3.6 times profit or 1.9 times revenue. It is a solid recurring revenue and company with a roster of regular clients, along with an impeccable track record, 350,000 automated recurring revenue alone. Typically, and it says, well, typically that would sell at 10 times revenue. So metrics and asking price are presented in Canadian dollars. So what's the Canadian to US exchange rate now? Like 4,000
so one
to
Canadian dollar is 0.75 US dollars as of today.
Okay. So
multiply everything in here by 0.75.
So they're asking 3.9 million Canadian. So really 3 million US dollars.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. So by the numbers, they've done $2 million in the last 12 months revenue, 1.1 million in last 12 months profit. So 1.1 million in profit on 2 million in revenue, $182,000 in last month revenue, and $110,000 last month profit. So as you guys read this, is this a standard custom software development startup agency business?
Yes and no. So it says, if you go down, it says, as a custom software development agency, we have built a distinguished track record over our 15-year tenure. I don't know how this is a startup then, if 15 years old. Our success is underlined by extensive recurring revenue, robust systems for new customer acquisition, and minimal overhead. Our profit records speak for themselves, with TTM profit of about 1.1 million. Our business model has always ensured profitability. We're very well positioned. And it keeps talking about this recurring revenue. And so like, I wonder, is that retainer, or are they trying to sell some sort of like maintenance, ongoing maintenance after they build something? Probably.
It could be.
It's gotta be.
Yeah. It could be hosting.
Makes you wonder the churn on it.
Could be maintenance. It could be some combination of those. So sometimes you'll pay, when somebody builds you a custom piece of software, you'll pay them to host it for you, and then they'll manage that. It could be that or that plus maintenance, which is like you pay a fixed fee every month for them to make sure it keeps running and update and fix bugs and all that kind of stuff. So could be one of the two.
Okay. So they build you a mobile app or they build you a web app.
I wonder if the 15-year tenure is just like their experience. Like the founder has been doing this for 15 years, but this company's a startup.
I don't know. I think it's probably a blurry line. Like the guy starts doing it, on his own, and then he gradually hires some help, and he gradually hires the help. And at what point did it become a company?
Or like, he had a falling out with his partner, and then rebranded, and it's like, hey, I have a 15-year track record. This LLC's been around for 5 years.
Right. Right.
They claim that it was founded here May of 2008, a team size of 21 through 100 people. And the way often businesses like this are organized is there's a US-based customer service executive team and sales team. And then there is a team somewhere in Pakistan, Afghanistan, not necessarily Afghanistan, Argentina, Eastern Europe, where there's just an office full of, or India, where there's an office full of people doing the actual development. Sales is in the US, executive in the US, and then development, all that kind of stuff happens overseas somewhere. Wouldn't surprise me if that's what's going on here. Except, well, instead of US, it's Canada, which is most likely Toronto.
The classic mullet business: domestic in the front, international in the back.
Get ready for it. I mean, it's every company I know is hiring overseas, and if your job can be done across the internet, it is susceptible to being pushed somewhere overseas, whether it's coding or admin or sales. If you can do it across the internet, there's now a world of people competing for your job to work for American companies. So,
is this a good business? So this is an agency. You come to them, you say, build me a web app, build me an iPhone app or whatever, and then you pay them ongoing to, make sure it doesn't break, add features, and host it for you. On one hand, it seems phenomenally profitable. This guy's making $1.1 million a year doing it. He's been doing it for a long time, and there is some fraction of recurrence to it. On the other hand, there are 11 billion of these, all over, right? Upwork and the internet. Like, there are so many. They are less than a dime a dozen. They're a penny a dozen. I mean, there's so many, and they appear to be totally undifferentiated. Is this a good business? I mean, it seems like a great business to own, but is this a buyable business?
I think one of the issues with this is that if you're good, you just get a lot bigger, because you can work for bigger and bigger clients, and you can take on larger, fees per engagement and, bigger projects. So if you get bigger, if you're good and you get bigger, why is this small?
Well, I think part of it is the dynamic of these type of agency businesses. And I think as Bill talks about, the development itself is commoditized, it's to some extent a red ocean. And your differentiators become one of two things. One is the relationships that the owner or the principal ends up having. Like, those become an unfair advantage for you, or you end up specializing in a particular domain, right? And so it's the same as like any sort of agency business, advertising agency, custom software development, SEO, all that kind of stuff. You either win because of the relationships and brand that your founder has, and you manage those relationships yourself, or you specialize in a particular niche. And so, Bill, I think my specific answer to your question is both of those are good businesses. It's to some extent dependent upon what your definition of good business is, right? Is this a business like a digital agency like this? Is a business that you can step away from without buying yourself a job? It depends, right? If you own a niche, potentially yes. But if you're just based on the relationship of the founder, kind of that type one that I talked about, it's maybe not. But either way, like, you can make a lot of money with a business like this. I think I don't want to diminish that at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically a labor arbitrage business, right? Like, you're hiring programmers overseas, and then you're packaging up those hours and selling them either at a fixed price markup or a variable price markup to people who want apps. And then you're also packaging up, AWS credits basically, and selling those at a markup to people who want hosting. So it's mostly a labor arbitrage business. You can tell it's international because the margins are so good. I mean, he's doing north of 50% net margins.
I was a partner in a business that did exactly this business model, but did kind of that type one, which was just like, generic. We'll take whatever customers we can get, and we'll do it solely based on the reputation of the founder and the selling of the founder.
Mm-hmm.
And like, we were barely profitable because we were always competing with the offshore mullet types, where it's like, they're buying labor in India for $3 an hour. Sure, they have to hire 3 times as many people, but like, it's still a ridiculous advantage compared to if you had all US staff. And we had all US staff, and you're like, well, I mean, surely people want to buy American. They say they want to buy American until they have to look at the bids.
Until they see the price tag.
It's the same thing. Like, you go to Walmart, and it's like, oh, hey, look where this American flag was made. It's like, yeah, there you go. They're always from China.
It's first, we don't want to buy American code. We want to buy international code because it's cheaper. The next step is we want to buy AI code instead of human code because it's that much cheaper still.
And potentially you can trust it a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because you don't, if you're shipping code overseas, the way to make code work is you got to have private, data to run it on. Like, a lot of people, once they realize, oh, I'm shipping stuff to Pakistan or, Southern Europe or all this kind of weird places, you're like, oh, maybe I don't want all my financial stuff to go there. But the other just anecdote for you, like most people also don't internalize that almost all of the, the big accounting firms and the out-of-station firms, they all have these massive like offshoring entities like BDO, RSM, like, Price Waterhouse, like all of these guys are shipping massive amounts of private American data to the Philippines or Indonesia or all these places every night to have them worked on by massive accounting teams there who all know US GAAP and all this kind of stuff, the accounting stuff. And then it gets shipped back the next morning and some partner here is reviewing it and signing off on it. Like people don't really understand that. So anyway, I found it super interesting when I learned that fact.
So can you buy this business? I mean, we don't have Heather here to tell us, how underwritable this is, but can you buy this with debt? To me, this is terrifying because you're labor arbitraging. If your clients go away, or if AI comes in, right, and takes your pricing power away entirely. If you can build apps with AI, I just worry that this business model could go away overnight. Is that valid?
I mean, I'm less worried about buying this business, about AI eating this for lunch. I think if you look at the pattern of new technology, it happens very slowly and then a mass adoption happens very quickly. And we're like going through that with EVs now, right? Like everybody, if you talk to people in 2015, by now they would think that we'd all be driving EVs. Well, it turns out there's some limitations to us all driving EVs, and self-driving cars are also very difficult. So, and look, I was in that bucket too. In 2015, I was like, man, there's no way I'd want to own a gas station. But it turns out like they last a lot longer than you think. So personally, I'm less worried about AI for this stuff because I still realize we have a ton of the way to go there. I think the bigger challenge for you to buy this, if you're an American, or a Canadian, is it's a Canadian business. And the downside with all of that is, as far as I know, you can't SBA loan this thing. There's not a lot of assets to attach to it. So it really limits the pool of buyers, especially considering Canada doesn't have kind of the same SBA programs we do. It's going to make it pretty tough for this to trade, in general. So.
Hey everyone, this is Bill. I'm just taking a quick break from this week's episode to tell you about a longtime sponsor, major fan of the podcast, Acquisition Lab. So a lot of our listeners that you guys tune in every week for our deal reviews, you want to get in on buying a business, but you're not really sure where to start. The cool thing about Acquisition Lab is they were created to solve that problem. So they exist to help people buy a business and also to navigate all the complexities of the process. They provide a trusted peer framework, tools, resources. They kind of support you all the way from search while you're looking to buy a business, all the way to close. So if you're serious about buying a business, you want to learn more about the process, and you want someone to Sherpa you through buying a business, check out acquisitionlab.com, or you can email the lab's director, Chelsea Wood, directly. It's just chelsea@buythenbuild.com.
Michael, how do you think the niche thing works on this? Like if you specialize in like, hey, we make websites for, local coffee shops. They all kind of start to look the same, don't they? If you're just doing the same thing, rinse and repeat for coffee shops or retail or whatever, or like you can only kind of, if you're going to be niche, it all starts to look the same, doesn't it?
For sure. Well, and that's a huge benefit, right? Like if I was to look into this business and it was a type 2 business where they've gone into a specific niche, and the niche can be the type of market you're selling into, industry wise, stuff like that. It can also be the type of like problem space that you live in. So you see lots of these agencies who go and specialize and say, I want to just do luxury brands that are very large and are international, right? And I'm going to be the custom development arm for them. And what happens is you get this real kind of two-sided advantage. Number one being you develop a brand in that market to where you walk in and you have a slide that's like, okay, everybody from Hermes to LVMH, all this stuff I don't buy, by the way. Like, I don't buy this stuff. I'm too cheap.
Sounds like it.
Well, I read some stuff on Twitter once.
Just messing with you.
I know what a Birkin bag is, but anyway. But if you can walk in and you have this slide that's like, look, we are the safe and trusted provider for all of these folks. And that ends up being, number one, a huge advantage for you where they know they can trust you. And they all talk amongst themselves. All their teams know each other. They do that. And then number two, you build up this like base of like code stuff and things that you've built and modules that you can plug and play for them. And sometimes it's as simple as you build an app for company A and just go into company B, you put a new skin on it, change the logo and resell it at full price. Like those become a huge advantage for you when you niche down, in a business like this. And you see that kind of thing happening through like outsourcing providers, right? Like, so if you're like somebody that competes with our business Near, they're a company that competes with our business Near, which is the offshoring company. But what they do is they'll go in and say, we're just going to do offshoring, but we're going to do it just for this. And one time I went through in Colombia, there is an office that basically is a company that's an offshoring provider, and they're in Medellin. So Pablo Escobar, all that kind of stuff, good offshoring location. And we go through the building and it's an entire floor of people who are the offshored back office for the guys that are small regional fuel haulers in the United States. So they do marketing, admin, billing, sales, all that kind of stuff. And it's just row after row of Colombian who are working remotely for these companies. And they've offshored all of their stuff, but they only do these small regional fuel haulers who cover 2 or 3 cities in a state like Texas or Florida or North Carolina. And I looked up and they had the entire United States. They had won over every single one of these fuel haulers across America because they had an unfair advantage. Like they knew how to do that for those businesses. They knew how to run it. Like it was kind of an amazing eye-opening thing as a business nerd to go in there and be like, oh, like this can really work if you do this niching down and specialization strategy.
So the way you describe it, Michael, it seems like you're saying the moat here is reputational, right? It's what other clients do you serve and do people talk? So that is really what you're buying, right? Otherwise, can't basically anybody just hire a bunch of overseas folks, set up a website and start cold DMing me every 5 times a day to ask if, I need a web app built for me?
Yeah, to push back on that a little bit, I think brand is a moat. I think you have potentially, so I agree with you there. I think you have a moat that finding a good and reputational, like somebody that deserves their reputation, finding a good offshore development agency or offshore development group is very difficult. There are tons of scammers out there. And then there are people that aren't scammers, but are just incompetent. Upwork is filled with them. So I think the fact that this person since 2008 has figured out a group or potentially hired their own team somewhere there's some value in that. Like one of my buddies runs exactly this same business here in San Antonio, and he's very successful with it. And his whole team is like in Serbia or something. And he goes over there like twice a year. He knows their names. Like he knows they're not going to screw them. He knows where they're strong and where they're weak and all that kind of stuff. So I think you get that as well. I think the third thing worth noting here is potentially you're buying client relationships. It's not just reputation, but you have contracts with these people and the clients know to come back to you. So I think there's value there just beyond brand, if that makes sense, Bill.
Yep. Okay. That makes sense. So does it trade for 3.5 times cash flow?
My opinion is it potentially can. I think it all comes down to the quality of those assets that we just talked about. How good is this development team? What do the relationships look like with the customers? What type of customers are they? What type of contracts do you have? What types of problems are you solving for them? Are they mission critical? Are they recurring? Like, are these things that are going to be coming back to you in the future? This is totally just like a SaaS business. One of those things that, in my opinion, just depends totally on the quality of the customer base. And, you don't really figure that out until you start to talk to the seller and figure out what sort of customer base he or she has.
And just for extreme clarity, what you want is a whole bunch of customers in the same niche. You want the niche to be growing, ideally, right? So there's a tailwind behind your clients' businesses. And you're hoping that a decent number of them are coming back for more and more work and using you for the recurring hosting and maintenance, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what makes this a great business.
I think that's perfect there. And, and you're not seeing margin pressure, you're not seeing a bunch of, competitors coming in. You're not seeing the solution space that you're in getting competed away because somebody comes in with a repeatable SaaS product. I think all of those are the things I would want to ask myself when I dug into that customer base. But I mean, I think the good news is this is one of those ones you can figure out all those questions in the first phone call with the seller. You start to ask about their customers, who they are, what the dynamic is, what does churn look like, how often do people churn, what is the revenue retention, all that kind of stuff. You figure it out pretty quickly how good that and qualified that customer base is just in the first phone call. So for me, it'd be worth a phone call if I thought I could finance this. And I think that's the bigger challenge with this one is because it's Canadian, you can't go back and use some of the US funding sources. Like you got to figure out how to get 3.9 million Canadian dollars to buy this business, which is, it's not as easy as the US for something like this.
How real are the switching costs for customers of a business like this?
It totally depends upon how specialized your knowledge is and how the deals are set up. If this is a eat what you kill type of business, then it depends also a lot on the dynamics of the projects themselves, right? Are these, fire once and forget? Are they rolling out stuff enterprise wide? How big are the clients? Like, are they referring you to other deals inside the company? Again, ties back to that idea of what is the customer dynamic and what is our relationship with each one of them. So that's what I would dig into to know. It's with this listing, I think it's kind of tough to know. It could be terrible or it could be great.
Well, 53 people who are in active conversations on acquire.com are learning the answers to these questions, I guess.
Man, as somebody who's going to start selling stuff at some point in my life, because I'm almost 50, the liquidity that acquire.com offers to businesses like this is really good because you don't see this stuff on Biz Buy Sell, and makes me want to start an agency.
So
or buy this one because it's okay.
For what it's worth, and they did not pay me to say this, I sold a business on acquire.com.
Right.
The day my second child was born, it closed. So this was like 2 years ago. It was a business that you could set up text messages for your wedding. It was called textmyguests.com. So you could pre-script wedding text messages like, the service is starting, turn off your phones, or the after party is at Connolly's bar, or whatever it was, right? And I listed it. And from the time I listed it on acquire.com to money in my bank account, 11 days. It was insane.
Oh my gosh.
11 days from list to wire. 11, like I had never seen, and I had probably like 3 or 4 offers. Like the liquidity on the acquire.com, and this was small SaaS, it was like low 6 figures, but it was crazy. I just couldn't believe the liquidity.
It's amazing. Yeah. Yay. It's also a testament to how people should, I think, approach side hustles as like a real way to like make some real money and also learn how entrepreneurship works. So I think it's a cool thing. And yeah, I love these platforms that enable them to be sold this kind of velocity.
I will do a Twitter thread with more details on how that went down, but Andrew and the Acquire.
I think you did once, didn't you? It was fascinating.
Yeah, a long time, like a couple of years ago. I'll resurface it on Twitter. Yeah. If you're listening, go find it up.
That's
an
amazing story.
I don't know about you guys, but I'm totally like, I totally consider whether, I have a whole checklist of whether I should start a new project or not, or work on something. But one of the things recently that has entered there is I look at it, I'm like, will this make good social media content? So it's totally part of my decision matrix now, unfortunately or unfortunately. But anyway, the one thing I just noticed here, it says pre-approved for financing, which, when people say pre-approved for SBA and stuff like that, we typically are like, no, there's no such thing. But it says, acquire the startup with flexible, non-dilutive financing from something called Boopos. Have you guys heard of Boopos?
Heard of it. What a weird name.
Business financing solutions for online businesses. I have just Googled it, as one does. Quality listings. You don't need to
I have seen a couple term sheets from Boopos. From people who asked me to review them, to help them review their term sheets. Because, I do kind of consulting to help people buy businesses. And I had a couple folks come to me and go, I'm going to use Boopos to finance my business acquisition. And then by the time I stopped chuckling,
This feels like a terrible name.
Boopos. But anyway, if I could summarize it, is that it's basically using a merchant cash advance loan to buy a business. So like the way this works is they analyze the cash flows, the revenue of the business you want to buy, figure out kind of how much they can charge you as a percent of revenue. And then you get a merchant cash advance loan that is paid back as a percent of revenue after you own the asset. It's a little bit more, the terms can be a little better than that, but that's functionally what it is. Cost of capital's 30% plus usually.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a simple Girdley rubric, but like I generally don't want to borrow any money unless it's like Main Street bank rates. And I'll go up a little bit from there, but it's kind of one of those things where I'm just like, oh, if I have to pay more than that for capital, it's probably too risky capital for me to borrow. But anyway.
Yeah, well, you guys have already heard my merchant cash advance loan rants, so we'll leave it there.
It's complicated, Bill.
If the loan is priced as a fixed fee and not a real APR, run. That's the short version.
Do you guys remember what happened? What was the name of those guys? Pipe.com. You remember those guys? Like they were like such a darling.
Yeah.
What? I don't hear anything from them anymore. Like, are they still a going concern?
I don't know. I've not heard a lot from them. I thought it was a cool idea, right? Basically what they did is they securitized SaaS cash flows and then tried to sell them as bonds. I don't know if it worked or not. So like the idea would be, right, if your SaaS business is going to generate, $1,000 a month of receivables for the next 12 months, like that's a bond. And you can turn that into a security and you, SaaS company, can sell your future revenue. And then Pipe was going to package it all up and sell it to people who wanted to invest with a yield. And Pipe was, I think, going to make a spread on it. It was a great idea. I don't know if it ever got traction. I think it did briefly during COVID, but I don't know if it's still going.
Yeah, I guess it is.
I pulled up their website here, but man, they were just such a darling for a while. It's one of those darlings and then disappeared.
Yeah, the one thing I'm seeing on their website that I don't like is that they are now working with CPG businesses, which tells me they've gone toward more merchant cash advance style. Because I think the beauty of it before was that it was SaaS recurring revenue, kind of locked in contracts versus revenue-based financing, which is, I don't know, less good, I think.
Yeah, this PAVE here that they have listed is education loans.
Because their base whole idea was packaging up future cash flows and selling it to investors, which is very interesting. But they've got a really tough two-sided marketplace. They've got to originate all of the revenue, right, at a cost of capital that makes sense to the businesses, which in and of itself is hard enough, even if you had a bank balance sheet behind you, just originating loans all day, right? But in their model, they then also have to originate the people that want to buy the instruments, the securities. So kind of classic two-sided marketplace problem.
Well, that's why you raise the venture capital.
That's right.
All right. That solves all your problems.
Always. Yes. No problems after you raise VC.
It makes things really easy. So back to this acquire.com deal, like I think this is one where I think a lot of people will pass on it just because it's a digital agency and it's either, it's got a bad rep, and agencies do often, but one worth like double clicking on, because there's just signs here where it's like, oh, it's Canadian. They've been around since 2008, so 15 years old. There's potentially green flags here amongst the red flowers, if that makes sense. And something, I can see why 54 people are expressing interest in it and taking a look at this one. So yeah, dig it.
Yeah, you could double click on this and there could be something there, something really unique and cool.
Yeah. And that's where you find that's the only way you're going to find deals in listing sites. Either something other people don't, or you find something that is an ugly duckling and you go look at it and you're like, oh, this is a beautiful swan. Because there's something missing in the translation there. So something to like about it. But man, digital agencies are just a great business to be in when you're getting started out. I mean, this guy started from nothing. He's making $1.2 million a year. I mean, Canadian, which is what, like $50 in Doritos, Chili's gift cards, but it's still a lot of money. Sorry. These Canada jokes are too easy.
And Tim Hortons gift cards, I think you meant to say.
Tim Hortons gift cards. Yeah. All right. Cool. Anything else about this one? Otherwise, I think we can wrap it up.
Let's wrap it up.
All right.
Thanks for
hey,
joining
everybody. It's a new year. Go tell your friends about Acquisitions Anonymous and how Bill is the hottest podcast host that you know, and get them to like the pod. We're trying to grow again this year, and we'll see you next time.